Hello, everybody.
Hello, ma'am.
All right, good afternoon. Hello, Dr. Houchen.
Hello, Enda, and hello,
How are
everyone.
you today?
Good. I just I just finished my breakfast.
um, you must have been very busy. Well, this is our second meeting.
Mm.
We're going to talk about expertise reversal effect, and I'll try to convince you that my students already read your paper. I hope they understand, but they attending this course, of course, to understand what's about expertise reversal effect. All right,
Okay.
so time is yours.
Thank you, Enda. Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone has a very good weekend. So the second lecture this week we are going to introduce the expertise reversal effect. This effect is an effect closely relevant to what we have talked about last week about the element interactivity. We can move my slides. Okay, so let's have a quick review about what we have talked about last week. So last week, firstly, we introduced the human cognitive architecture. So this architecture actually deals with um, the information processing from working memory and long-term memory. And underneath the architecture, there are 5 principles to support the architecture, and also the 5 principles showing the pedagogical function of this cognitive architecture. So what are the 5 principles? So we have the 5 principles. The first one is information store principle. So if we need to if we are going to solve a problem, we need to store a lot of knowledge first. And how to acquire knowledge. So we can borrow knowledge from others and then reorganize the knowledge. And if the knowledge cannot be borrowed from others, we can randomly generate new knowledge based on our old knowledge. But everyone needs to keep in mind, because working memory has very limited capacity. Therefore, we can only generate, or we can only process very limited new information in working memory. So that's why we have the narrow limit principle. And once the information has been stored in long-term memory as knowledge, we can retrieve the knowledge from long-term memory back to the working memory to solve problems. I think next week we will talk about the retrieval practice. I will talk about more how the information is retrieved, and how the information why the retrieving process is very important for learning. Next week we will talk about the net effect. And also last week we have some discussions about the relation between element interactivity and expertise. So we mentioned for novices, solving an equation which has high element interactivity, but the same equation for an expert would be low in element interactivity. And this week we will continue talking about the relation between element interactivity and expertise. That is the effect that is the expertise reversal effect. Of course, we will and talk about more about the expertise reversal effect. For example, how we are going to apply the expertise reversal effect to the classroom, and the the teaching implications about expertise reversal effect. So the learning objectives for this week. At the beginning, I want to introduce some theory, some theoretical part of cognitive load theory. So everyone is going. I think most of you may be a math teacher in the future. So have you ever thought about how to categorize knowledge? And have you thought about which type of knowledge you need to teach in the classroom and which type of knowledge you don't need to teach in the classroom? So at the beginning, so before introducing expertise reversal effects, I'm going to introduce some extra theory from the cognitive load theory. That is how we are going to categorize the knowledge. So we are going to introduce the biological primary and the biological secondary knowledge. And then we are going to talk about the expertise reversal effect and also the application of expertise reversal effect, which is the adaptive learning environment. So we are going to achieve the 3 goals. I will guide everyone step by step. So firstly, we are going to talk about categorizing knowledge. So as I asked everyone before, anyone, I think probably you can unmute or you can raise up your hand. So in your opinion, which type of knowledge you need to teach in a classroom, and which type of knowledge you think, oh, I don't need to teach this type of knowledge in the classroom? Anyone would like to share your personal experiences? That your answer may not be correct, but that's totally fine. I just want to check whether you pay attention to knowledge categorization during your teaching. So which knowledge you think we must teach in the classroom, and which knowledge we don't need to teach in the classroom? We just consider this in mathematics. In mathematics or other domains, yeah. Okay.
Procedural knowledge, Mr. Procedural knowledge, conceptual knowledge, maybe.
That's right. I agree. The conceptual knowledge and procedural knowledge must be taught in the classroom. But I don't know whether everyone also aware some knowledge we don't need to teach in the classroom. Like some knowledge children, like students, they already have before they go to schools. Do anyone aware of that type of knowledge?
I'm sorry, prior knowledge, sir.
Okay, the prior knowledge is kind of it's too general, but yeah, but that knowledge actually, that's right. We may not teach, but that knowledge actually students bring the prior knowledge to the classroom. But the prior knowledge is not very specific or exact. So now I'm going to introduce the knowledge categorization and why we need to categorize knowledge before our teaching. So in the cognitive load theory, we categorize knowledge into biological primary knowledge and the biological secondary knowledge. So what is biological primary knowledge? So the biological primary knowledge, this knowledge is passed down from our ancestors. So which means this knowledge we don't need to teach. We don't need to teach this type of knowledge because this is we naturally inherited from our ancestors. So what are the so more specific? What are the which type of knowledge or which specific skills can be called as biological primary knowledge? So for example, hearing and speaking your mother tongue. So here the skill of hearing, we don't need to teach students. We don't need to teach students how to hear. They can hear naturally. And also, we don't need to teach students how to speak their mother tongue. For example, we don't need to teach students how to speak Indonesia. The baby, the very young baby, they can gradually speak Indonesia naturally because we have the natural speaking skills, and also living in Indonesia, the babies can naturally pick up the speaking skills. So this type of knowledge belong to biological primary knowledge, and as a teacher, we don't need to teach those skills. With all of these skills are passed down from our ancestors. However, another type of knowledge, the biological secondary knowledge, this type of knowledge we must teach. We must teach students the biological secondary knowledge. Firstly, this knowledge is culturally based, and also the students cannot inherit this type of knowledge from ancestors or naturally pick up secondary knowledge. So for example, so that's why we have schools and educational institutes to teach the biological secondary knowledge. So for example, solving equation, writing an essay. So all of the subjects we teach in the school belong to biological secondary knowledge. The math and English and PE even. So all of the knowledge we teach in the schools or educational institutes belong to biological secondary knowledge. So anyone has any questions, or do I need to further explain the knowledge categorization here? Or do you have any questions about this? The biological secondary and biological primary knowledge.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Dr. Chen.
Yes.
About solving equation, it's in what problem equation? That means secondary knowledge. It's like mathematics problem solving or problem solving in our daily life.
Okay, so the solving equation means the knowledge we teach in the schools. So like you mentioned, the solving math equation, solving the math problem in the schools, in the classroom. But of course, once you have acquired the knowledge, you can apply the knowledge outside of classroom. We can practice the knowledge in the society, but the biological secondary knowledge, as I summarized before, the biological secondary knowledge is all of the knowledge we need to teach in the schools. So this is a very important summary. And the biological for the biological primary knowledge, and like hearing, speaking, and those skills, they are from our ancestors. We naturally inherited those skills, so we don't need to teach in the schools.
In the learning context. In classroom.
Yes. So are there any more questions about? Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions about the two types of knowledge? Okay, looks okay. So why we need to categorize knowledge before we teach students? That's because before you teach, understanding types of knowledge is very critical. If you don't understand which knowledge I should teach, which knowledge I shouldn't teach, your instruction will be random and blind. For example, we need to teach mathematical skills in schools, but you don't teach. You teach students how to hear, how to hear sounds, which we don't need to teach. So actually, so that which will cause your instruction very efficient. So our instruction, so all of our instructions should focus on teaching biological secondary knowledge. All the knowledge should be taught in the schools. So here I have a question for everyone. So do you have some examples for biological primary and biological secondary knowledge? So now consider an example from your experiences. So do you have a example for biological primary knowledge and biological secondary knowledge? Can you give me an example? So firstly, can you give me another example about biological primary knowledge? Okay, I saw someone put in the chat. Walking, yes. Okay, walking. Yeah, I think so. I think can walk. Yes. I think cycling should be secondary because we need to teach cycling. But walking definitely is naturally inherited. But the cycling we need to be taught how to cycle, how to ride the bike. Another example about biological primary knowledge is trees and pointing. Okay, if you use your finger to trace a line or trace a line or trace a circle, the tracing, this skill is biological primary. We don't need to teach because everyone knows, everyone can, once they are born, they have the skill to trace, use finger, and use a finger to point someone. You use finger to point something or point some objects. The pointing, this skill also belongs to biological primary knowledge. So the question is, does biological primary affect a person's biological secondary? Definitely. So in the cognitive load theory, we have some research suggests we can use biological primary knowledge to learn biological secondary knowledge. So for example, we have in cognitive load theory, we have an effect called the tracing effect. So we use finger to trace something, which will lead to better learning than without tracing. So this research shows we are using biological primary knowledge to support our biological secondary learning. So you are correct, and so the biological primary knowledge will affect the biological secondary knowledge. So now anyone can give me another example about the biological secondary knowledge. The biological secondary knowledge is knowledge we teach in the schools. Yeah. Hello. Oh, sorry. The signal is not very good. Oh, sorry. I think probably you can type in the chat. But I couldn't hear your voice. Yeah, but yeah, I think you can put your answer in the chat.
Mohon maaf, Pak Endar, tidak terdengar suaranya, Pak. Mohon maaf, Bapak, suaranya tidak terdengar sama sekali.
Okay. Sorry. I think you probably can put your answer in the chat. But currently in the chat, I saw reading skill and reasoning skills. That's right, because we need to teach students how to read, and also we need to teach students how to reasoning, like the math reasoning. So the two skills belong to secondary, the biological secondary knowledge. That's correct. So I hope everyone now have a clear idea about what is biological primary and what is biological secondary. Okay, I got another question. Can we say when someone don't have biological primary knowledge is a special needs person? I think that is a very good question for me because the biological primary knowledge naturally actually is something we naturally inherited from our ancestors, like I said, the hearing and the talking. But I would say if someone couldn't hear, definitely that person belongs to special needs person. Maybe that person needs some help about hearing. That's definitely true. Yeah, I think this question is very interesting, but based on my experiences, I would say yes. Like if the person couldn't hear, you need to that person needs extra help to hear something. Yeah. So I think I believe everyone will be a math teacher in the future. So that's why I introduce this part at the beginning, because being a teacher, you need to clearly understand which knowledge I should teach and which knowledge I shouldn't teach. And so I put this this part at the very beginning of today's lecture. So next, we are going to talk about the expertise reversal effect. So the expertise reversal effect. So this effect, oh, sorry, I made a typo. So no, this is not 2017. That should be 2017. Okay, so this effect, this effect was suggested and tested by the Professor Slava Kaluga in 2017. And this effect shows an interaction between learner's expertise and instruction. So how could we understand this one? So how can we understand interaction between learner's expertise and instruction? So for example, so specifically for the same instruction, it works for novices, but the same instruction may not be effective or even cause reverse effects for experts. Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. So for example, we are going to use work examples to teach students. And for year 7 students, or for maybe year 5 students who don't have any algebra knowledge, and we want to teach them how to solve 3x plus 5 equals 8. So for this situation, a year 5 or year 6 students, they are novices about how to solve equation. So we need to provide, so using work examples to teach them is effective. However, if we use the same work examples to teach year 8 students about solving 3x plus 5 equals 8, which may not be effective because they already know this knowledge. So using work examples will be ineffective and will cause a lot of will cause high cognitive load. So this is how to understand an expertise reversal effect shows an interaction between learner's expertise and instruction. So for the same instruction, it works for novices, but for the same instruction, it may not work. It may, by the same instruction, for experts, it may be ineffective or even cause reversed effect. So this is a general definition or general idea about expertise reversal effect. I will give you more examples later. And also, as we have talked about last week, we mentioned expertise is closely associated with element interactivity. For example, in order to solve this equation, for novices, this material belongs to this material is high in element interactivity. But for experts, because they already have the schema, so this material belongs to low in element interactivity. Therefore, the expertise reversal effect is also decided by levels of element interactivity. Let me give you an example about the paper. I think this paper should be I sent to everyone last week. So this paper, we ask participants to either memorize some formulas, for example, the area of a circle, or either calculate the area of a compound shape. So to memorize some formulas for such as the area of a circle, and this material belongs to low in element interactivity. But to calculate the area of a compound shape, this material belongs to high in element interactivity. So my question is to teach memorize memorize formulas and to calculate the area of a compound shape. Shall we use work examples to teach both of them? Anyone can try. So firstly, I want to teach some formulas to my students. And another situation is I'm going to teach my student how to calculate a compound shape. So for the two situations, shall we use work examples to teach both of them?
Okay, can I translate that to
Oh.
my students?
Okay.
Oke, so jadi pertanyaan dari Dr. Chan adalah ketika kita mau mengajar siswa tentang hal-hal yang sifatnya low of in element of productivity, sesuatu yang sifatnya mudah dihafalkan atau memang dipelajarinya ya satu-satunya dengan menghafalkan, misalnya tentang komponen atau apa bagian-bagian dari lingkaran. Kan kita nggak mungkin kan ini jari-jari gitu. Memangnya mau dipahami ya, dihafalkan kan, oh jari-jari yang bagian ini, diameter bagian ini. Mau nggak mau kan belajarnya caranya menghafalkan. Atau rumus lingkaran itu memang ada learning by doing juga sih sebetulnya, tetapi kan lebih banyak pada akhirnya kita hafalkan kan bahwa luas lingkaran adalah pi r squared, something like that. So that's what we call low in element interactivity. Kemudian kalau ada pembelajaran tentang compound shape itu artinya bangun datar gabungan, misalnya persegi dengan jejer genjang. Gabungan bangun datar itu namanya compound shape. So you can say that a compound shape is commonly a high in element of interactivity. Nah, the question is that shall we use work example approach to teach them? Work example approach atau pendekatan work example di sini pembelajarannya adalah di mana siswa belajar dari contoh terlebih dahulu, kemudian diikuti dengan problem solving. So usually work example approach, students learn from example first, so they borrow prior knowledge from examples and then they try to solve it by themselves in the subsequent problem solving. Now the question is that you choose work example or not for either low or high or both. Okay. Jadi
Thank
pertanyaannya
you,
itu silahkan
Anda.
mau yang jawab. Yeah. Before I forget, can you go back to previous slide? Before this, the Slava Kalyuga. Yeah, that's not 2077, but 2007.
Yeah, that's right. I made a typo.
All right, that's all. Thank you. All right, so students, do you want to try? What do you think? When should we use book example? All right, Merdan, you want to say it? You can turn your mic on.
Yeah, the current environment is not very silenced for that reason. Is that okay if I send my answers?
Okay.
So I think for this time, let me say it. If it's in love element interactivity, no need to, what is that? No need to do work example because of it's very simple. What is that? Information student can understand it easily. They can conduct to the questions for solving. They can use it easily. But when I teach them very, what is that? Confusing or very difficult something formula, they request me to do work at the example to make it clear to understand it. What is that? They want me to do work at the example. It's kind of abstract information. Can you please make it concrete? Can you give examples? So that's how they understand it more easily, or that's how they, what is that? Can get it clearly by work examples when it's in high element interactivity.
Thank you, Merdan. Thank you, Merdan. I understand your points. They're very good. So yes, and as Merdan mentioned, so we don't need to use work examples to teach both of them. So for the low element interactivity materials, we can ask participant to generate, and for the high element interactivity material, for example, calculate the area of compound shape. This is high in element interactivity. We need to use work examples, and I will explain why. So this is a this is an experiment we did. So for teaching math formulas, we showed one group the formulas. So we showed the one group about the area of a circle equals to pi r squared. And another group, we asked them to generate the formulas. We only gave please write out the formulas of a circle. So the participants needed to write out, okay, pi r squared equals to the area of a circle. So that group needs to generate the answers. And we found for this materials low in element interactivity, we found generating answers actually outperformed to read those formulas. So which means we don't need to show the answers to our students. We need to ask our students to generate the answers. But the condition must be the materials low in element interactivity. But how about the situation when we teach materials high in element interactivity? So we did the similar comparison. So to teach calculating the area of compound shape, we showed one group students the solutions how to calculate the area of compound shape, and another group we asked them to generate the answers. And we found for materials high in element interactivity, a study with examples is much better. compared to study with problem solving. So what's the reason? So here the summary is for materials low in element interactivity. Using work examples doesn't work. Because when the materials low in element and interactivity, which means students have more knowledge, or the students are the experts about these materials, we don't need to give extra or additional more instruction to our students. If we give more instruction, if we using work examples to give more instructions, which will cause redundancy. So that's why for simple or materials low in element interactivity, we don't need to use work examples, which will cause redundancy, and redundancy will cause high load. However, for materials high in element interactivity, which means students have less knowledge in this about these materials, using work examples is better, and we strongly suggest to use work examples. That's because when students don't have a lot of knowledge about these materials, using work examples will reduce load, because as I mentioned, we can borrow the knowledge, and the borrowing knowledge will impose very low load. So combine the two results. So combine the two results. This is a very clear expertise reversal effect. Because for novices, for students have less knowledge, using work example is better. But when students have developed their knowledge in this domain, when students have more knowledge, using work example doesn't work. Using work example is not beneficial. So this is a very clear expertise reversal effect. And also, the reason why we have expertise reversal effect, as I mentioned before, that's because when we using work examples to teach, which will cause redundancy because students already have knowledge. But for materials high in element interactivity, using work examples could reduce load. So that's why using work examples will increase learning, will facilitate learning. I don't know, anyone have any questions about this part? So do I need to explain more about this part? Will someone
Silahkan jika ada yang mau bertanya. Any questions? If you want more explanations or examples about maybe why work examples doesn't always be beneficial.
May
any-
I ask?
Oh
May
yes, Nadila, go on.
If the materials are low in element interactivity, but the students have less knowledge too, should we use working examples, or it's not beneficial? Thank you.
Okay, so once the materials are low in element interactivity, which means students have a lot of knowledge already. So you can see they are actually the relation between element interactivity and expertise. Actually, they are not positive relation, they are negative relation. So students have more knowledge will cause the materials low in element interactivity. If students have low knowledge, which will cause the materials to be high in element interactivity. So I don't think we have low materials low in element interactivity, and also students has low expertise. So this situation may not happen.
So it's not impossible. We have methods in low in element interactivity, and the students have less knowledge, right?
Yeah. I don't think we will happen this situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, I saw someone put the answer in the chat. I think that the explanation is correct. The understanding is correct. Is correct. So when we use work example for a materials high in element interactivity, because the high element interactivity material will increase intrinsic load. So in order to manage the cognitive load, we need to use work examples to reduce the extraneous cognitive load. So that's correct. So that's why for the high element interactive materials, using work example could reduce load. But using work examples to teach materials low in element interactivity, which will increase load. That's because which will increase redundancy. That will introduce redundancy effect to the students. How to understand the redundancy? So it's very interesting because a lot of people think we need to introduce the same knowledge for many times. We need to introduce knowledge for maybe we need to introduce how to solve equation for as many as we could. Maybe I want to introduce, I want to teach students how to solve 3x plus 5 equals 8, maybe 10 times, 11 times, 15 times. The more, the better. But actually, once the students have the knowledge to solve this equation, we don't need to teach them anymore. They can solve the equation by themselves. That's because if the students already have the schemas in their memory to solve an equation, if we introduce the solutions again, which will cause redundancy because the student need to reconcile their old knowledge and also the knowledge you introduce. So which will cause redundancy, which will increase the load. So I think probably the you just need to understand we don't need to teach students with high expertise in a domain. We need to encourage them to problem solving once they have high expertise in maybe in solving equation. But if the students have no knowledge about solving equation, we must use work examples. And that, do you have some additional comments or? Okay, it looks Enda it's quite silent. Okay, agree. Okay, so yeah.
I think it's quite clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear. Except students want to ask more about this.
Yeah. So so these two, so you can see the two situations that combining the two situations, it shows an expertise reversal effect. So this is the expertise reversal effect. And the next, I'm going to talk about the rapid cognitive assessment. This is a very practical tool. Actually, I think this is a very practical tool you can try in your classroom, and also this cognitive assessment is totally built on expertise reversal effect. So what is the cognitive assessment? Firstly, this assessment is built on schemas or knowledge, or we say it's built on students' expertise. And it is very critical. It is very critical to know students' prior knowledge if we are going to use this assessment. Because if we don't know students' prior knowledge, our instruction may not be effective. Like I mentioned, if the students already have a lot of knowledge in this domain, we don't need to teach them how to solve. So what is the assessment? So this assessment is going to ask the student to give the first step towards the solution within a very short period of time. For example, I ask you, please give the first step towards the solution. Please give the first step towards the solution of this equation. So what are the first step you will give? Anyone can type in the chat. You can type in the chat. The first step towards the solution.
Oke, coba silahkan dijawab langkah pertamanya saja, bukan jawaban akhir ya. Langkah pertama untuk menjawab ini apa?
Each side is reduced by 5.
Okay.
Jadi apa yang kepikiran di kita pertama kali kita mendapati soal seperti itu? Bukan langkah-langkah lengkapnya ya. Apa sih yang kepikiran? Oke.
Yeah, you need to show you need to show the steps very close to the solution. The first step, the normal first step. The first step is you need to show the first step towards the solution. So you need to show the first step. The first step is very close to the solution. Okay, everyone, yeah, everyone shows to multiply, to do the multiplication, to do the not multiplication, to do the subtraction on both sides. Okay, so that is you give the first step. But for some students will get, but based on the results, when I think they collected data in Australia or somewhere. So Slava Kaluga, he found some students gave the first step as 3x equals to 3. And some students gave the first step directly x equals to 1. And some students gave the first step as 3x equals to 8 minus 5. So the three possible first step actually shows students have different levels of expertise. So for example, when these students show the first step as x equals to 1, which means the students are experts in solving this equation. When the students when the student gave the first step as 3x equals to 3, which means the student has advanced knowledge. But when the student show 3x equals to 8 minus 5, this student has a lower expertise in solving this equation. So you can say when we use this type of assessment, we can categorize students into different levels. So we can categorize students into different levels of expertise. So based on the results, they found using the cognitive assessment could effectively test students' prior knowledge. And also the rapid cognitive assessment is highly positively correlated with the traditional test. The traditional test means the school exams. So applying the rapid cognitive assessment, we can design the adaptive learning environment. So for the rapid assessment, do you have any question about the assessment, or do we need to explain more about the rapid cognitive assessment? Okay, it looks quiet. So
I'm sorry, Dr. Chen.
okay.
Is it the rapid test? Is it like the rapid test for the expertise of students?
Yes.
So we would know the level of the students from the rapid cognitive assessment.
Sorry.
No.
I think.
The
So
test, the rapid cognitive assessment is like it is like we check the expertise of the students.
yeah, that's right.
So we know the level of the students from
Yes,
the test,
yes. So
from the
we are,
assessment.
yeah, that's right. So we use this assessment to know prior knowledge, to know students' prior knowledge.
So we need to do this assessment in each meeting or in some conditional situation.
I believe you can use this assessment in any subject. So if you want to teach equation, you can use this assessment. If you teach geometry, you can also design this assessment to measure students' prior knowledge.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chen.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so based on the rapid cognitive assessment, we have an adaptive learning environment. This is the application about expertise reversal effect. So the general structure of the adaptive learning environment is we have a pretest. The pretest is the rapid assessment. So we use a rapid assessment to measure prior knowledge. And then based on the prior knowledge, we actually categorize students into different levels, maybe the high expertise level, media expertise level, and low expertise level. And then the students go to different groups to learn the mathematics. So for the students in high expertise level, they probably can go to the next module, the next topic directly. And for the students from in the media level or the low level, we need to use some work examples to teach students in media and lower expertise level. And then they have another test. This test will again to assess students' knowledge, and then we will categorize students into different levels again, and then they will have another learning episode. So this is the general structure of the adaptive learning environment. So as I mentioned, we use full work examples if the students has low level of expertise. However, for the students has high level or has already have enough knowledge about this math topic, we just need to ask students to engage in problem solving. However, as I mentioned, based on the rapid assessment, we may have some students have the media level of expertise. So what we should do to what instruction we need to teach, we need to use to teach the students with media level expertise. So we have a compilation effect. So this effect shows using partial work examples if the learners have some prior knowledge. So if the learners has media level expertise, we can use partial work examples to teach this part of students. So how we are going to design the partial work examples. So the students need to fail and complete some steps of the math problem. For example, to solve this equation, I gave some information. I gave some information about the solution, and I asked student to complete the rest part of the solution. So this is a partial work example. Of course, you can always design the partial work examples based on learners' expertise. If the learners has less prior knowledge, we can show more information. If the learners have more knowledge, we can omit more information. So this is the partial work examples. So now I give maybe everyone maybe 5 minutes or to try to design a task for testing the compilation effect. So which means you can choose You can choose a topic and to design a partial work examples. And how many minutes? 5 minutes or 3 minutes? You are mute.
As many as you want. We actually
Yeah.
have meeting until like 5 p.m. here. So
Okay.
it doesn't matter if you give
I
your
don't
extra
know, I
time
don't
for
know
us.
what's the time now. I didn't track the time.
It's 4:30. Nearly
Oh, okay.
4:30. Yeah, you still have like half an hour if you want to.
Oh no, wait. I think we we finished by time. We finished on time.
All right then.
So everyone,
worries.
so you can maybe show Enda and me a partial work example. You a partial work example maybe to teach how to solve an equation and to
Okay.
solve
So this is
geometry.
weighted examples, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will share to my students one of my papers about weighted examples.
Mm.
There are examples of the weighted examples itself, and you know that we know working no forward weighted example and backwards weighted example,
Mm.
and in do you know that in the studies uh, students prefer one or the other, depends on the level of expertise.
Mm.
Some of students like to have the examples at the end. Some of
Mm.
the students like the examples at the first during the study of weighted examples. But
Mm.
let me try to explain this in Indonesian.
Okay.
Jadi ada word example. Word example has a full steps of solution to shown provided by the instructor to the students. Weighted example itu seperti word examples, tetapi hanya sebagian saja isinya. Dan kenapa ini disebut dengan completion effects? Karena sebetulnya siswa belajar sambil melengkapi. Jadi completion effect, siswa belajar sambil melengkapi. Nah, untuk mendapatkan contoh weighted examples, I'll share to you, or you can search from my Google profile. You'll find one of papers with one of my papers already published there about weighted examples. And Dr. Chen's asking you to design a task for testing the completion effect. So he explained to us whether work examples effective not for all students, but for students with low level of prior knowledge. But at the reverse, at the opposite, when students have higher level of prior knowledge, what example is not working, that is not working anymore. That's what we call expertise reversal effect. And for students whose level of prior knowledge in the middle, jadi untuk siswa-siswa yang pengetahuan awalnya itu sudah punya, tetapi tidak begitu lancar masih proses belajar, masih perlu ngulang-ulang, sering lupa, maka ada salah satu instruction yang bisa dipakai, strateginya adalah weighted example. Nah, apabila seseorang berhasil belajar melalui weighted example itu, namanya disebut completion effect. Dampak dari melakukan completion, dampak effect itu kan dampak ya, dampak dari melakukan melengkapi pembelajaran dengan melengkapi. Jadi dampak pembelajarannya itu namanya effect. Completion effect itu dampak dari belajar menggunakan weighted examples. Okay. So Dr. Chen, you want my students try to answer it now?
Yeah, you can. I think probably you can show. I think the time is almost there, so you can maybe show a partial work example to Enda after this lecture. So
Sure.
because like Enda mentioned, using full work examples may not work every time because we need to know prior knowledge, learner's prior knowledge. So
okay, so
if
before you leave, you want to see or you, so we can discuss it like now before you leave.
Oh, about what?
So
Sorry.
I already have the examples right now ready.
Oh, okay, okay.
Do you mind to wait a couple minutes?
Yes, and also, can I ask maybe another question, because the recording you sent to me, can I download the video, or I can only use a link?
I think you can download the video somehow.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Have you got my email though?
Yeah, I saw the link, but because I probably need to download the video and do the edit the video.
I think you can download it. Have a look.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. But it's a big file.
Mm.
Anyway, all right. So here we are. This is from one of my papers about video example. The question here is, learn how to solve the problems of applying algebra for rectangles by completing the following problem solving. In this in kind of problem solving, this is a question. There are like 4 steps of solution. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But look, the first step is omitted. Okay, and the students are asked to complete this first step. After a set of faded examples, this is what we call faded examples, because the steps of the solution are faded. After students learn a set of faded examples, and then after the test, we find it out that students reach a good score, then it is called they got the completion effect. Jadi setelah siswa belajar satu paket gitu ya, bahan pembelajaran, setelah diberi tes dan ternyata nilainya bagus, artinya dia kena dampaknya, kena efektivitasnya, kena dampaknya. Dampaknya itu yang disebut dengan completion effect. Jadi kalau setelah belajar satu set work example dan kemudian nilainya bagus, maka dia kena dampak work example. Bahasa Inggrisnya, they get the work example effect. Here, faded example, then they get the completion effect. So the first step is omitted. And then in the second question, the first 2 steps are omitted. The students need to complete step 1 and then step 2. And then the third step, steps 1, 2, and 3. And then the problem, step 1, 2, 3, 4, omitted, but they still got the hint here, the clue that step 4 should be the conclusion. And the fifth step is, the fifth question is like an open question. Open question. So here they get this context. A rectangular field has a length, this is blah, blah, blah. But from my study, we propose that when students learn from faded examples, we shouldn't just leave them with a set of faded examples, but we also ask them to answer such questions to wrap up what the problem solution should be. Like this conclusion, to solve a rectangular problem related to algebra, manipulate the given form by substitution, distribution, addition, subtraction, and this. And then create a rectangular problem. So also asking them to create a problem. So they try to solve using the steps that they just learned from the faded examples. Okay, so that's forward fading type. And we also have this backward fading type. In the backward one, we omit the last step. So step 1, step 2, step 3 are given to be learned, and step 4 is omitted. It has hint here. Conclusion. Yeah. And then for the second problem solving, step 3 and 4 omitted. and so on. So the same as the forward-faded example, here the last problem doesn't have the solution except they have this one, the clue for the first step. And they also have number 5 and number 6. Number 5 is a conclusion, just to final remark what to do to solve rectangular problems. And number 6 is ask them to create a similar problem. So they try to solve the problems that they create using the steps that they just learned from the faded examples. So you can find this paper here, the title, Faded Examples from Learning Contextual Mathematics Problem Solving Skills. It's from Kartika Octaviani and me, like 3 years ago. So basically, we talk about an examples on how to create faded examples and some explanations why we create faded examples, that because it has completion effects. And there are 2 types. For the main references for this, you can try this one. Or you can find this one, number 1 is the main references. The main reference for this. Okay, Dr. Chan, you want to leave, or I wish you want to stay here though? I think there are questions.
Yeah, I think some student, I think a student already asked a very good question. I use the erroneous work examples.
Okay, the other type of work example, erroneous work example, right? So there's not many study yet about erroneous work examples, and I have done research on that too. Haven't been published yet. Yep. But see, there are many topics in work examples that we need to investigate further.
Okay, so I think I will see everyone next week, next Monday.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk next week?
Retrieval practice.
Retrieval practice, sure. All right. So today we learn with you about expertise reversal effect. Do you have final remark?
Yeah, I think everyone just need to understand which situation you need to understand how we define the expertise reversal effect, and also we need to pay much attention about learner's prior knowledge. Learner's prior knowledge is very important when we design instructions.
All right. Yeah, there are many empirical data supporting this statement that there is no single strategy or learning approach for everybody. No, you need to understand there are different situations, different level of expertise, different different students, different characteristics. So we need to understand that first before we apply a learning strategy. Thank you very much for today, Dr. Chance. Everybody
Thank
wants to
you.
say thank you to him.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Chen.
you, Dr. Chen.
Thank you, Dr. Chen.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye
And see you
bye.
again.
Bye-bye now. Talk to you
Bye-bye.
later.
Bye-bye, Dr. Chen.
Okay, so students, is there any questions about today's lecture? Adakah pertanyaan mengenai pembelajaran hari ini? Tadi ada tentang cara cepat ya, cara cepat mengukur kemampuan pengetahuan awal. Nah, tentang pengetahuan awal ini mungkin agak berbeda ya dengan tempat kita ya. Biasanya kalau penelitian skripsi dan tesis itu. So, what we call with pengetahuan awal here is, kamu sudah tahu atau belum tentang apa yang akan dipelajari? Oke, jadi kalau misalkan pembelajarannya tentang equations kan, apakah kamu sudah tahu tentang equations itu atau belum? So and then we know about low level of prior knowledge or high level of prior knowledge. So prior knowledge here means if whether you already learned that topics or not yet. So prior knowledge is not only about the prerequisite knowledge. Prerequisite knowledge itu kan prasyarat ya. Prior knowledge itu perspektif awal tentang topik yang sedang dipahami. Seberapa baik, seberapa tinggi, seberapa mendalam perspektif awal tentang pengetahuan yang dipahami. Bukan hanya sekedar pengetahuan prasyarat. Jadi beda ya. Okay, prerequisite and prior knowledge, two different things. Maybe related, of course. Ada pertanyaan? Any
Ibu,
question for me?
tanya.
Ya, silahkan.
Kalau rapid cognitive assessment ini di Indonesia belum, saya juga baru dengar ini, Bu. Tapi sebenarnya ini ide yang bagus. Yang ingin saya tanyakan, cara mengetesnya sesederhana yang Mr. Chen berikan tadi, atau memang ada kayak pagar-pagar tertentu gitu loh yang harus kita penuhi, misal untuk validnya atau enggaknya gitu, Bu?
Nah, nggak ada. Sesederhana itu, namanya juga rapid test kan. Rapid test. Jadi validitasnya tentu saja dilihat dari kesesuaian antara materi yang akan dipelajari dengan isi dari pertanyaannya. Jadi kalau apa yang akan dipelajari tentang persamaan, tentang equation, so of course your prior knowledge is about the equation. Jadi kalau pengetahuan awalnya tadi, Mbak, jadi misalkan apa yang akan dipelajari adalah tentang luas bangun datar, maka rapid testnya kan tentang luas bangun datar, bukan tentang equation. Jadi mungkin validitasnya dilihat dari sana, kita nggak ukur reliabilitas dan sebagainya. It's not just rapid test. Rapid test that is strategic and applicable for teachers. So it's also for quick diagnostic for teachers. For teachers understand how much level of prior knowledge their students.
Terima kasih.
So, jadi understanding about the mathematics content itself is important to know what specifically is very needed to understand the learning topic. Jadi konten matematika sangat penting untuk memahami sebetulnya yang paling krusial bagi prior knowledge di topik yang akan dipelajari itu apa. Of course, you can use something like software, even just a simple one like Google Form, Quizzes, Mentimeter, or things like that. You can use that for the rapid assessment tools. For example, if you want to be more details in qualifying students into low level of prior knowledge or moderate or high level of prior knowledge. As well, perhaps you want to see whether they can apply that mathematics ability fluency or not by taking the time that they use to answer the questions. For example, in the rapid test, usually we only measure 3 seconds, first 3 seconds. Jadi hanya diberi waktu 3 detik untuk menjawab. But you may try, you ask the student to answer it as much as they want, but you want the first thing that come up in their mind when they're facing the questions. Boleh misalkan dibalik, jadi maunya kita yang penting jawab kepikiran di otak kamu apa sih untuk menjawab pertanyaan itu, dan kemudian dilihat dari waktunya, kan ada yang lama, ada yang sebentar. Okay. Namanya juga rapid test, so we need that to whether we give them full work examples or not, whether we can give them projects so they can run it themselves for independent learning, or we need to give guidance. So understanding the level of prior knowledge guide us to design our instructions with a fully guided instruction or less guided instruction. And as you know that a problem-based learning, such as that common problem-based learning, is categorized as less guided problem solving or unguided instructions. Karena kalau dalam problem-based learning itu kan sesungguhnya we only give students problems or case, and then they raise their questions and try to answer on their own question using their own way, something like that. It's only effective when students have sufficient prior knowledge. But when we use that with guidance, it's actually you giving them a guided example. Kalau kita memberikan siswa atau mahasiswa sebuah worksheet and we title that with problem-based learning, but inside it you give step by step to complete. Kalau kita memberi siswa LKS, kemudian di dalam kita beri judul LKS ini adalah problem-based learning, kemudian di dalamnya kita beri langkah-langkah untuk dilengkapi, sebetulnya itu bukan lagi problem-based learning seperti problem-based learning-nya constructivistic. Itu valid examples. Completion effect. Karena siswa hanya melengkapi kan completion effect. Tapi completion effect itu juga perlu didesain. But it's not all valid examples are good valid examples. The completion effect also doesn't happen as they complete something and then they get completion effect. No. The design of valid examples need to fit their cognitive capacity. So we need to recall, we need to consider about intrinsic, the element of interactivity, and then the extraneous cognitive load, the presentations of the text, figures, objects, symbols, etc. And so when we designing instructions, it's not just prior knowledge that we consider. We will have to consider also how we present everything else in the instructions for the student. Okay. Okay. Any more questions?
Bu Endah, mohon izin.
Ya.
Oke, kaitannya yang adaptive learning tadi berarti kalau misal ada anak yang karena kalau yang sudah kemampuannya bagus dengan problem solving, kalau yang masih sangat rendah dengan example, berarti nanti di akhir kegiatan pembelajaran tersebut apakah memungkinkan siswa-siswa tersebut memiliki kemampuan yang bisa dikatakan hampir sama atau tidak jauh beda dengan kondisi awal siswanya tersebut?
Good question. Pertanyaannya sangat bagus. Adaptif biasanya sudah diimplementasikan di placement test itu ya. Dan kalau kita situasi kita sekolah-sekolah seperti saat ini, sekolah-sekolah kita dikelompokkan secara acak kan karena ada banyak pertimbangan psikologis lainnya, tidak hanya sekedar tentang aspek kognitif yaitu pemahaman siswa atau kelancaran siswa dalam berpikir. Dan kita seringnya mendapati kelas kita sudah terlanjur campur, ada yang cepat banget mikir, ada yang enggak. Tapi di pembelajaran yang lain mungkin terbalik situasinya dan seterusnya. Tidak, di matematika mungkin ada yang lancar, tetapi di perkuliahan atau di pembelajaran yang lain mungkin bahasa dia yang lebih lancar dan sebagainya. Situasinya berbeda-beda. Nah, yang menjadi saran, kalau memang ada perbedaan prior knowledge yang sangat ekstrim di kelas, maka memang menggunakan metode yang berbeda. Tapi prior knowledge di sini kan katakanlah itu sebagai perspektif awal dari topik yang akan dipelajari oleh siswa saat itu. Nah, ini jarang sekali terjadi. Kenapa jarang sekali terjadi? Karena di Indonesia pakai kurikulum nasional. Jadi belajarnya itu mesti bareng-bareng. Biasanya yang membedakan itu dia cepat atau lambat dalam kecepatan berpikirnya aja. Tetapi prior knowledge tentang topik itu sama. Tadi ingat ya, prior knowledge dan prerequisite knowledge agak beda. Jadi biasanya siswa, karena pakai kurikulum nasional ya, hari ini semua siswa kelas 7 SMP, kelas 7 SMP ya. Now at this stage, year 7, when you use national curriculum, 2013 curriculum, then they all learned about linear equations. Sama levelnya, sama-sama linear equations. So when you want to get them learn about what's the very extremes, for example, area using calculus, luas daerah menggunakan pendekatan kalkulus misalkan. At this moment, although you ask that to the best student in the class at year 7, pasti nggak tahu. All the worst students in the year 7 pasti juga nggak tahu. Misalkan saat kelas 7 saat ini kan siswa belajar tentang persamaan linear ya, ya nggak? Bareng kan, pakai kurikulum nasional. Nah, kalau misalkan pembelajarannya mau tentang luas daerah menggunakan pendekatan kalkulus, menggunakan integral ya berarti ya. Luas daerah menggunakan integral. Meskipun ditanyakan ke siswa paling pinter, pasti dia nggak bisa. Karena sama-sama belum mempelajarinya. Jika siswa yang paling nggak bisa, apalagi kan sama-sama belum mempelajarinya, sama-sama belum punya prior knowledge-nya. So it's easier for us when we teach at schools with national curriculum like in Indonesia, because we may assume that they learn the same thing at the same time. The difficult part is that when your students, for example, Mardan, he's teaching now in Sekolah Kesatuan Bangsa ya.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So your curriculum is Cambridge. Cambridge curriculum may like different
Yes, ma'am.
different sequence than the national curriculum. So at year 7, it's not easy for teachers at modern school, at your schools, to use which learning strategy, because there are several topics in Cambridge that haven't been learned in national curriculum even at year 6. Is that right, Mardan?
It's actually, I'm not very, familiar with
Okay,
the national curriculum, so.
Yeah. All right, so you need to give students like prior knowledge tests to ensure they already learned or they haven't learned, and then adjust that. You use the adaptive learning strategy. So for students who already have that or not yet. So for Mardan, if the students graduated from Cambridge curriculum and then they continue using the Cambridge curriculum at year 7, it's easier to design the instruction compared to students who use national curriculum and then change into the Cambridge curriculum at year 7. Because you need to adjust, because there are topics that they haven't learned in national curriculum and vice versa. There are topics that already learned in national curriculum that haven't been learned in Cambridge.
Oh ya pantesan punya bunda langsung nggak mati. Gara ana sing telepon nggon laptop.
Similar case happens when we got to teach students in higher education level. because they may have been graduated from anywhere with different learning curriculum. Similarly, teaching to like master students like this. Some of you already got this learning material. Some of you may already got psychology of learning from during the undergraduate degree. Maybe the others not. So it's easier for me to, but at the beginning, I always ask you, you already learned psychology or not yet? And well, because teaching students at school different to teach different to teach adults like you. So, but actually, our human capacity is the same. It must be very hard for you following my lecture if you don't have sufficient knowledge about psychology, or even if you never teach at school. Because what we're talking about is always the implementation at schools. I believe that happens to you. Who's not reading first about psychology or who doesn't have prior knowledge about schools. So when I give you examples or when we talk about the implementation at school, so then you feel like overwhelmed or kayak bingung gitu, ini ngomongin apa sih? Jadinya kan kita perlu dulu itu persepsi gitu kan ya. Tapi sebetulnya persepsi pun juga tidak mudah juga kalau siswanya juga sebelumnya nggak ada yang diingatkan karena belum mempelajarinya sebelum kuliah ini. Iya nggak?
Ya, jadi itu bagaimana Ibu mengkondisikannya, memberikan materi berarti?
Ya kalau mahasiswa dia harus belajar sendiri.
Ya, in konteks mahasiswa.
Ya, kalau mahasiswa harus belajar sendiri. Maka kalau di sekolah, perlu ada placement test. Di mana-mana masuk sekolah kan ada placement, ada tes masuk gitu kan. Tes masuk. Bisa masuk masa SD pun di mana-mana ada tes masuk SD. Cuma standarnya kan bukan berarti harus bisa tesnya sesuai dengan tes level sekolah yang akan dimasuki itu. Jadi mesti ini juga mempertimbangkan konten matematiknya ya. Konten matematiknya gimana caranya bisa masuk ke level higher atau advanced dengan prerequisite yang minimal. Dan kalau memang kenyataannya siswa sebelumnya nggak ngerti apa-apa, benar-benar nggak ngerti apa-apa, jadi bingung kan gurunya, siswanya tuh nggak ngerti apa-apa, ini harusnya sudah dipelajari di SD. Yang harusnya sudah dipelajari di SD itu prerequisite. Prerequisite-nya tuh nggak punya sama sekali, Bu. Gitu. Nggak pernah belajar apa-apa. Dari penelitiannya cognitive flow theory, pendekatan worked example yang paling mudah untuk diikuti oleh siswa. Jadi siswanya nggak ngerti apa-apa, Bu. Prerequisite nggak punya, prior knowledge nggak punya. Jadi materinya itu completely new material. Then use worked examples. You got to give a full guidance instructions to the students. Otherwise, they know nothing. Or otherwise, learning becomes clumsy. Clumsy itu lambat sekali, Kak. Ini yang nggak ngerti muridnya atau gurunya yang nggak bisa ngajar ya. Clumsy. Jadi di kelas itu rasanya, ya ampun, bertanya aja diminta menanya, nggak nanya. Diminta mengamati, malah yang diamati yang itu, bukan yang ini. So learning becomes clumsy. So when your students really doesn't have any clue or any idea about the topics that you're going to teach, then you really need to design a fully guided based instruction. For example, good example strategy. Otherwise, learning becomes very clumsy, takes time, annoying, and boring. And students doesn't like that either. So they're not motivated for the subsequent learning. Once your students not interested to your learning anymore, not interested to you, not interested can happen because they they don't understand, they cannot follow you, tidak tertarik itu bisa karena ini ya, nggak menyenangkan. Menyenangkan itu bisa karena mudah kan ya. So easy can be enjoyable. Enjoyable because it's easy to follow. Then research says that give them work examples. But the problem is that to create work examples is not easy. Not all work example works. There are work example effects that have to be considered. Spread tension effect, redundancy effect, segmentation effect, even examples given in animation, in cartoon animation compared to human animation might give different results. Jadi ada penelitian sebelumnya memberikan contoh simulasi ya. Simulasi. So for example, I have a box here. Cannot see. For example, I have a box here. Okay, so I give to you like a simulations about three-dimensional figure. Okay, rectangular prisms, flat, things like that. So I give you like simulation how to understand three-dimensional figures that has volume and things like that. So me as the agent, like human as the agent, compared to the agent is like a cartoon figures. Jadi ada penelitian di cognitive theory memberikan contoh dengan demonstrasi yang mendemonstrasikan manusia dibandingkan dengan mendemonstrasikan adalah kartun. Ternyata hasilnya beda loh. Kalian biasanya kalau membuat R&D, research and development nggak asal gitu kan, pakai kartun aja lucu gitu kan. Tapi sebetulnya itu sebetulnya ada aturannya, kapan pakai kartun, kapan enggak. Okay, all right then, students. I think I conclude the class. I end the class now. So one important note for all of you is that expertise reversal effect. Experts here doesn't mean that you are old, you're knowledgeable, old, famous, not that one. Experts here means more knowledgeable. Experts here means that you master the knowledge. All right. So prior knowledge is a critical factor to consider when we design instructions. And no single instruction works for everybody. It really depends on one factor, that is what we call prior knowledge. We can use rapid assessment tests to diagnose whether students already have that prior knowledge or not yet. And prior knowledge is different to prerequisite knowledge. We talking about this again next Monday, but I think I already sent you like schedule of the topics that we are discussing in the coming lectures and also some readings. And please see my Google profile. I have 3 papers, I think, and coming papers, joint publication with Dr. Chen, and also some other papers about work examples, problem solving. Yeah, if you have any questions, any question raised from your reading, just write it down in the WhatsApp group. I may try to answer it right away, or maybe later, or in the lecture. All right. Thank you very much for your attendance today. I'll see you again next Monday. Thank you again. Have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you,
Ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am.